Peace to the gods and earths. My name is Damiek Allah. I got knowledge of self April 26, 1986 in Far Rockaway, Queens, New York.
As a youngster, I remember the guard was very active. We used to do a lot of running around in the streets, at 6, 7, playing a lot of sports, football, baseball, mostly. And the guard was very active, and coming up when we was maybe like Born, Justice, when we first heard Rapper's Delight, I remember we played that record from dusk till dawn,
I said the hip hop, the hip it to the hip hop, you don't stop the rocket to the bang bang boogie. Say up jump the boogie to the rhythm of the boogie to beat.
So the guard was very active, and the old earth, because I know because he's like my physical. His mom's and my mom's was people's, from when they was young. So we just came up together.
My enlightener was a brother by the name of Divine Allah. He was a local neighborhood brother that we all kind of looked up to. In and out of the pen, came home one time and, we walked up to him and said, "What's up, Flappy? How you doing? We ain't seen him in a minute." And his name was, we called him Flappy because he had some big ass lips. And he came over and just punched me and my partner, Kenny, in the stomach. And said, "My name is Divine Allah. That's what you call me from now on." And that was my first introduction into the gods and earths. And over time, he took a special liking to me and kind of, not just me, but all the babies that was in the neighborhood. And he taught us. He taught us from the get-go who the original man was, and we ran with that. And the brother went back to jail, and he passed away in the penal system at a very young age. And I moved to Long Island, maybe stayed there about a year, and 2 other brothers took me under their teachings, brother named of Damiek Allah and his brother Rashawn Allah, who was at that time named Supreme Mathematics Allah.
The feeling that I got when he told me that he was getting knowledge was, I was proud, you know what I mean? It was right and exact, because we was just, we came up together, so it was like, I had just gotten knowledge from my enlightenment, like a couple months earlier. He got his enlightenment out here in Far Rockaway, and when he finally said that he was gonna get knowledge, he was like knowledge a couple years old. That's when it was a proud feeling. That was a good day.
Then I moved out to Love Allah, which was in 1987. And when I moved out here, I had up to the God degree of the 1 of 14. And, came out here and met the God Born Allah. Born Allah was at a school where I had attended my last year of high school, and he was building in a classroom, bombing a teacher.
Why don't you just ask your question?
We were discussing the disciples. What color were they?
Well, I don't think we know that for certain.
But they were Hebrews, were they not?
That's right.
As was Jesus. Jesus was also a Hebrew.
Why don't you just ask your question?
What color were the original Hebrews?
I have told you that we don't know that for certain.
Then you can't believe for certain that Jesus was white.
And there was a girl that I was dealing with at the time who heard the language that Born was speaking, and I had taught her the same thing. And what she did is she got Born's degrees and passed it to me. And at that time, I was in my first year of college, and I came down and checked to see who this cat was over a phone conversation, and we was inseparable from that point, We did everything together because we was all we had. We was completely isolated in the worst part of the worst part, and all we had was each other. Born came here with knowledge of self already. He had his supreme mathematics, and what I gave him was his supreme alphabet and his student enrollment. And from there on, we started linking up. Born really couldn't stay in Simi Valley based on its slow pace. out there in the suburbs, and you could count the amount of original people in one hand. And he ended up moving back down to LA, but we still kept in contact. And he met a brother by the name of Kwame, who was from New York also, that had knowledge. He was a newborn, and that turned into my king. And me, him, and my king became inseparable, man. And that's the foundation of Love of Law. We got the lessons, we studied them, then we found out they wasn't right. Warren went back with the music industry.
Now double barrel positivity, armed and dangerous from the IG posse, educated and trained to spark the brain, the double barrels aim and double the slain.
Him and King Born at the time, and he was able to go to Mecca and get the actual lessons and get it right. And what he did was right and exact, because he would come back to LA, and when he came back here, he immediately passed the degrees on to us. And the firstborn, we basically taught each other. We really didn't have older people influencing us, with the exception of maybe Born-Allah, who had the God Saheem back in Nawai, that really took him on the next level. We kind of had to learn this on our own at that point. And you know, the firstborn, we dealing with myself, Born-Allah, my king, Just Life, Justice at the time, but Just Life now, rest in peace to God. You got King Born, you got Sudan, Divine, who is now El Sadiq. Then you also have Knowledge Born, and there's 8 of us. We can't really say who the 9th was, because we was all teaching each other and teaching fruit. So we always refer to the 9th born as our fruit for that generation. And several people claim it, but it's really not that important at the point. You know, it's just real about building. So we've had this park right here, Lamert Park, for about since 1989. You know, the God, Lord Jamel, who was our elder at the time, came through. He's another brother from the desert, Queens in New York. And he came out here, and that brother taught us how to hold parliaments. And being that he taught us how to hold parliaments, the first official park parliament was here the last week of February 1989. And it was a beautiful thing. Our nation grew from that point. And by the time we started teaching, we made sure that all our lessons were right and exact, and we had an understanding of what we were supposed to do with this knowledge. As a child, I always feel I was a natural born 5%er, because I never believed in the teachings of the 10%. And I feel naturally a child, by the time they hit 9 years old to about 16, they're gonna question what they've been taught and force-fed to them over the years. And I was no different from any other child. I asked a lot of questions in my family, and my families were Christians. Went to a Catholic school. Had to go to church 2-3 times a week, once or twice with the Catholicism, taking Holy Communion, being an altar boy. Then on Sundays, we head down to Brooklyn, and my aunt had a church. We have maybe 3 or 4 ministers in our family. So me asking those type of questions was taboo. I instantly became the black sheep, and I never really believed that there was something up in the sky. I just had problems with it. I tried, but it really didn't work for me. And I used to see gods and earths around, but all I knew is that they stood in a circle and they used to talk real loud. That I didn't have any connection to that, but I was used to seeing it all the time. And sometimes they pull me aside and they have me listening, and all I knew is that they knew all these measurements, the weight of the earth, and the speed of the earth, and the distance of the planets from the sun, and how they rotated. And I thought they were the smartest kids I had ever heard of before, because they was the same age as me, but I really didn't get a real understanding of what was going on. Maybe when I hit about 14, I really started searching and reading books, autobiography of Malcolm X. I read autobiography of Muhammad Ali, How to Eat to Live, by Elijah Muhammad, Behold the Pale Horse. I read these books like 14, 15 years old, and it kind of set me on a path. And during the time, it was a real conscious movement in New York. Zulu Nation was my first introduction into knowledge itself. And when I stepped into that and they gave us lessons, which was similar to the Muslim lessons, something clicked, but it really wasn't enough, because when these brothers got together, the chapters that I was dealing with, to me it was kind of like a gangbanging thing. They was against each other and whatnot. And you know, I just referred back to the God divine telling me, do you know that the black man is God and there's nothing higher than you, and it's your natural birthright to be God of this universe? And that made perfect sense. So I started trying to get that out and looking for the God divine. And you know, it was a repetitious thing over the years that he was telling me, and I'm hearing it, and it started to make sense compared to what I was dealing with. And I made a decision one time, because I knew I was completely happy. I mean, I like really tried to be a Christian, and it didn't work for me. And the day that I got my Supreme Mathematics that was everything. What did it do? For me, I would say my confidence level rose on a whole new level altogether. And I knew who I was. And I was one of those ego-driven, cocky, burning with fire, tell everybody the black man is God type of cat. And I burned a lot of bridges with that, you know. And I do believe that at the beginning, when you learn of your history and what's been happening with you, you automatically kind of get angry and hostile, and you carry a violence inside of you towards white people or your own people that have no knowledge of what you're trying to tell them, but still rejecting it at the same time. And it took me some time to get that out of my system. Like I said, I burned a lot of bridges, and over the years I grew into it, and I learned what my duty was. The God Jamel taught me you have to apply these lessons to everything that you do, and you have to shine. And I feel I always had that magnetic. When I was a kid, I was usually the youngest, and the oldest cats was asking me questions. You know, I was always a natural teacher, but really didn't know it at the time.
When God got knowledge himself, he was pressing me to do the same, because he was telling me of the change that it provided for him, how it elevated him, the difference of how he was mentally.
Had all the attributes. I definitely had the magnetic, still do, but that was my gift. And what the God taught me is that he didn't want me to be on the streets teaching. The gods back in Nawa told me the same thing. They didn't want me to be on the streets teaching. There was something meant for me to do something bigger. And I never really understood what it was until I started teaching.
Some of the changes that came about when Asiatic got knowledge, I mean, definitely confidence within oneself. You know, once you get your supreme mathematics, your supreme alphabet, your 12 jewels, you're on your way, buddy, so it makes you feel good. You know, definitely challenging the establishment's educational system, you know, and that social studies teacher used to have a problem, you know, educating the 85% that didn't know the black man is God. I mean, don't you know that the black man is God? You know? So I remember when Asiatic, you know, when we first got knowledge, you know, we fasted, no food, just water, and the mint balls. Catch breath used to say when you had to go through that fast. So you come around and you build and just have them mint balls.
And what I mean by teaching is I'm a school teacher and been doing it for 17 years, and it's my duty, and I take it seriously to teach these babies who and what they are, and they need to know that, you know. And I would say lifestyle change is definitely more pressure. I don't know if you're happier when you got knowledge yourself in the beginning, because once you get knowledge of yourself and who you are, now there's a major responsibility. You got to teach it, and teaching ain't easy. You know, teaching is not easy because we're the 5%, and being that we're only of this 5%, oftentimes we're rejected. We come across as being crazy because what we're saying, for some people, it's never heard. It's never been said. But if you keep that repetition of dropping jewels with them and showing them what you're talking about and doing your duty as a civilized man, it comes to pass. Those seeds that you plant, they're gonna grow in one aspect or the other. And I'm a true believer that that's the methods of teaching. Peace. Our history of how the brothers connected here in LA is a history that the brothers really don't like me to tell because it's the truth. But I have to tell the truth from my mouth so that nobody else can say it. You know, I'm the maker of my own Quran where that's concerned. But I moved from Naui to a place called Simi Valley in California, where there was virtually no black people. There were 2% black people back at that time, which is 1986, 87. And to this day, there's still 2%. It really hasn't grown too much. And when I came here, I had fire. My first name was Love Asiatic Allah. And now why they still call me Asiatic. But when I came out here, I was stuck because I was the only brother around. I had to try my best to maintain, and I really didn't know how to go about it. I wouldn't say I fell victim, but I definitely experimented, and I went back to my honorable name, which was David. I dropped the Asiatic because I knew it really wasn't going to work, and when I tried to explain it in the beginning of who I was and what I represented, it definitely didn't work. At the age of 16 and 17, I would definitely say that your hormones are raging. Sex was on my mind, and there was no sisters around, so...
You got with me spite your family, because you were curious about black.
You know, here I am with knowledge of self, telling people that the black man is God, that I'm sole controller of the universe, telling them the wisdom degree in the student enrollment of who the colored man is. And meanwhile, I'm thinking about power you. So I got with a white girl. And it was an experiment, you know. I taught her lessons. I taught her up to the student enrollment. The supreme mathematics, the supreme alphabet. And I don't know what I was doing, I just didn't know what else to do at the time. And this is the same girl that was a TA in a classroom her senior year when here comes Mustafa, which at the time that was Born's first name. And Mustafa was bombing a teacher, geography, history teachers, and she recognized the language he was speaking. So when she said, my boyfriend speaks of this, automatically Mustafa had a problem with me. I got his degrees and called him, and I had a problem with him because he had a problem with me. So we decided we was gonna do a meeting, and I was at a local college, and I came home, and we clicked. We clicked immediately. The girl that I was dealing with, she was very important for a couple of reasons. One, it kind of taught me that my duty was to teach all the human families of the planet Earth. And when you standing on a corner and you isolated building with God's, and you're not dealing with any people but them, you kind of get tunnel vision of who you are and what you're supposed to do. And I was definitely a racist until, you know, physical lust made me go in the opposite direction that I never thought that I would go in. But she's definitely pivotal for our nation because I taught her, she understood what Bourne was saying, and without her being there, me and Bourne never would have hooked up. And I haven't dealt with anything like that since, you know, but I definitely have a little bit more tolerance when I hear of a brother or sister that did that in the past, because a lot of it deals with your geography, you know, especially if you're young and your geography is based on certain demographics and certain cultures around you. You're gonna eat what you're being fed, you know, in order to survive. And at that point, you know, I really didn't have no control. I'm not independent enough to live on my own. I'm with my old earth, who's basically still taking care of me. No matter how independent or how much God of the universe I thought I was, I still couldn't take care of my 12 jewels on my own. So it's a different perspective. I was humbled living there a year or two before I moved on to the next level. And I still contact that girl. We still friends. You know, it's nothing of that. She got her own family. I got mine. She knows my understanding and she knows what I taught her. She still believes it to this point. And there's a lot of people that know that. They just don't want to say it, or they really don't know how to express it. And that's one of the things that I learned. When we met my king had just come out of a hospital, man. He was in a total body cast. His back was broken. And he was basically lying around in his house for a year, not being able to socialize or move. And when we first went over, me and Bourne, to his house, I had my own car and I was driving down from the valley, scooping up Bourne, and me and Bourne was going out all over LA like we was always here, you know, got to know the city, got to know the people. And we'd go over to Ma's house, and Ma decided he wanted to come out, and his older Fran, you know, we call him Mama Fran, she told me, if I let my son go out with you, you need to make sure you take care of him. You know, one of those sentimental, what's that group, The Temptations with Blue Moon moment. You know, she made me promise that I would take care of the guard. So we got in the car and we would travel all over LA, building. We just spent a lot of time together going through the lessons, dissecting them, breaking it down. Spent a lot of time on the phone, two-way, running up our mama's bills. You know, there wasn't no cell phones out there. Long distance calling from the valley to LA was expensive, but we kept in contact, and we still tight. You know, sometimes we have disagreements. We've sparked the hell out of each other, you know, to where it damn near came to blows at times, but that's what brothers do. You know, I've handed Bourne his ass, he's handed me mine, same with my king. And what we do, we figured out that the three of us, we had like a method. I was the person that just did things. Bourne was more flamboyant, so he's seen and heard. Still to this day, Bourne is seen and heard. And my king is the filter. He's the one that could, I would say, look into a man's soul, listen to his words, and he could detect their character immediately. He got a gift for that. And what I learned with my king, even though, you know, he's more of the guard. He was the one that protected everybody, even though he was the youngest. He took that responsibility on to make sure that he filtered out anybody that came around us. And I always tell people, if you know Ma, it's wise to listen to what he says, because he got a gift with a filter. So if he tells you about a man's character, you need to take heed to some form of fashion. Don't rush into it and just trust because they claim to come in the name of Allah. All three of us had a unique style. Then we got with Just Life, And Just was different, you know. And I would say Just was different because the God Just, he just had something special. He did everything full out. Everything full out. And you always hear the gods talk about him, but if you want to picture the ultimate street teacher, street God, who knew his lessons and would take a man under his wing and show him the best part the right way, we all look at the God Just Life with that. He was amazing where it came down to that. And when all four of us got together, it took it to the next level. Just was a builder, you know. He was our culture. He was the fourth seed. Now, and I don't mean by the fourth seed, you know, the devil grafting the fourth seed. I mean, he was the fourth brother among us, and he was our culture free. And you know, Just did his duty and he taught. There were brothers Sudan and El Sadiq, who was divine at the time, and they came around and they built, you know, and we never had issues. We always had a link. We had our little arguments here and there, but we always took care of each other. And I probably caused more arguments being that title of firstborn. I just would do and say things, and we would have to argue it, and they would make me show and prove it. And the funny thing is, when you show and prove something to a person, they're not receptive of it until they could gain an understanding of it. And when they started gaining the understanding, I started seeing, reflecting back to what the gods was telling me, that I had something special with that magnetic, and my duty was to do. He said, your duty is to do something on a bigger scale. And I was going to school. I was playing football. I ended up getting a scholarship, went to Fresno State and was playing football. And I decided I was going to take that shot. And again, the first parliament that was up there, right behind me, I couldn't go to because I had to leave to go up to school. And I was kind of like in a twist because I wanted to be home and be with the gods because I saw something major about to happen. But at the same time, I had this opportunity to further my education and follow my dream, which was I was a ball player. I wanted to go to the NFL. And the God Lord Jamel told me if he caught me at the first parliament, he was gonna whoop my ass because I needed to be in school. And I knew I could whoop his ass. He was an older cat, and I knew I could whoop his ass, but I took heed to what he said. And I went off to school the same weekend, and I got my education, man. I got a degree in English, and I tried to pursue myself as being a writer, and that was a hard knock life. You had to kind of keep a day job with that. And what I did was, you know, just on a whim, somebody told me to go ahead and try teaching. You got something that you could give, and I tried it, and that's been the passion. That's my duty, fully, to that point. And it all came to pass what I was told when I was a youth, and how I had to take these lessons and what I had to do with it. It's quite simple, man. You learn this and you teach it. That's it. You don't got to do nothing else but that. I was angry when I got knowledge of self. I was like real mad that we was living in this matrix, living these lies, and I carried that with me, that anger. I took it to me to Fresno. Instead of playing ball like I should have, I was teaching, and coaches had a problem with that. And I was telling everybody the black man was God, and they was like, are you gonna be a preacher or are you gonna be a ball player? And I took that the wrong way, you know. So I'm still keeping it simple right now. That's what our teaching allows us to do. I would say it's helped me in my anger management, because coming up, the 5% had a real bad image when I was growing up. If there was any crimes or killings or tragedies within the neighborhood, somehow or some way a 5% name was connected. And I don't know if it was really true or if it was just the media, you know, trying to cause trouble among the righteous people. So when I first got it, of course, my family turned on me. They really couldn't deal with it. And I had a hard time trying to prove who I was because it just seems that we're racist people. But it's funny because for the last 500, 2,000 years, what have you, they've been portraying a person that's blonde hair and blue-eyed.
The white image of Christ is really Caesar Borgia, and the second son of Pope Alexander.
Which we know with the geography and the time that this so-called person existed, it was impossible for him to look like that. And it's part of the trick, because coming up as a youth, when you see that, and you learn in school the only thing about your history is dealing with slavery, it's an automatic inferiority complex that the youth put inside of themselves automatically. And it's subtle. You barely notice it, but it's highly effective because it's making us take the best part out of ourselves and put it where we can't reach for it. And you know, our lessons tells us that they know, the devil knows that when a man dies, he can't come back from the grave to tell whether he's lied or not. So it's a trick. And that's the first thing that has to be taught. And once I got that, and I went to Fresno and played myself kinda, messed up some relationships and burned some bridges, I grew. Living around white people was the best thing for me, because what I learned is that grafted one was grafted for a purpose. You know, 6,000 years ago. The white people here, you know, they don't pay their rent, the man kicking their ass too. They starving just like us. And they can be righteous people if they're taught effectively. And I know some. And that was the lessons brought me full circle with that. That's what you call living out the lessons. You know, you get the lessons and you memorize them and you quote them and you walking around and you tell yourself that you're sole controller of the universe. And I really believe that I was sole controller of the universe. I'm not just talking my crib, I'm talking everything. And as you get older, you find out all you got control of is really yourself and your actions in your household. And it's a humbling experience. And that's where our flag comes in, that sun, moon, and the stars. That's our universe, that's everything. That's what we can control. The other sciences that's out there, if it's not the sciences of life, it's not the real science. It's not a science, it's a lie. And having this about me gave me a purpose. It gave me a reason, because number one, I wanted to be that 5%er that everybody could say was right and exact, because the brothers who taught me weren't like that. But they taught me in a way that they wanted me to be greater than them, kind of like the way a father raises his own children. And they didn't want me doing the same thing, so they always told me that magnetic that you have to do something on a bigger scale. And I always go back to that, because that's exactly what I'm doing right now with the teaching. You know, we still teaching. I got frustrated with 5%ers at one time. The drug selling, the multiple baby mamas not taking care of them, acting like 85s, not eating pork and quoting lessons was the only difference. And I took it personal. And what I did was I put down my book of life maybe for about 10 years or so, man, where I really wasn't going through my lessons in the book. I started going through them in the head and trying to walk and talk. And had I not done that, it brought me back full circle, because my 25th year, I had a calling, like, yo, what's going on? And I went back to my lessons. And it was the 25th year that I had knowledge when I went and done that. And I had to start from scratch, from the knowledge degree, from the supreme mathematics to supreme alpha alphabet and take myself all the way through 120 again. And it was more difficult the second time around because as a seed, I really didn't have too many responsibilities. I got this when I was 15 and a half. And all I had to do was my chores and homework. But when you study it as an adult, you got babies to feed. You know, you got to go to work. You got other projects. You got family. You got responsibilities. And I definitely love my degrees now more. And I would say that they brought me to be part of the man who I am now. My family is strong people. They're from West Indies. I'm first generation born American from the island of Barbados. So discipline and high expectations was always in me. But I feel I got molded and shaped it and grew right with the lessons. Peace.
Damiek was already a very good person prior to him getting knowledge of self. Indeed, knowledge of self made him a great man. It made him a great man because of the simple fact that he's a teacher by nature. So knowledge of self just expanded his natural capabilities, his instincts was heightened.
When we came out here in 1989 to hold the first parliament here in Leimert Park, in the heart of Los Angeles, I would definitely say we didn't know it was going to be what it is right now. We were just kids trying to share what we had with others and hold them accountable for this gift that we had. And we've grown a lot, man. Despite what people want to say, the fact that you're here, the fact that I'm still here, the fact that we still got a second and third generation that have knowledge of self, we definitely are still doing what we have to do. But I would like to see here in LA us on a bigger scale. And what I mean by that is I feel we should have in a law school, if not in a law school, we should have at least a place where we could consistently mentor the youth and provide opportunities to build up the community. And I would like us to see it on a business economic level. That's what I learned, man, and I would love to see that, but I can't knock the teaching because the teaching is still here. And you know, the old cliche is that there's only 5% of the 5%, which is true. So those who are true and living is going to teach. But what I've also come to understand is when you around brothers and sisters and you building and teaching them, and then they disappear, they didn't necessarily fall victim. They just someplace else. And they continue in those teachings whether we want to admit it or not. They got something. If we could just stop them from eating pork, that's an accomplishment. You know, because civilize he who is savage. That's our duty. We got to teach them the knowledge of themselves, righteousness and all the sciences of life, love, peace, and happiness. And that's our duty. So we've been doing it. I just like to see it on a grander scale, but that's just me. And what I mean by that is I've always wanted more for our nation because I still got that burn inside me that I'm not going to be that 5%er that does not live out his name or his culture. Because I've seen that growing up. You know, the brothers that are so-called parrots that walk it and talk it to a certain degree, but they're not really living it. And the brothers are building though, man. To say that brothers aren't building, I would feel that's disrespectful. I want us to hold property, you know, real estate, be involved with major things that's going on within the community, and be seen and heard everywhere. And it's just a matter of time, you know, the patience of putting this together. It's gonna take some time, you know. But we doing our due. We doing what we have to do. What I don't like about the nation right now, and I wouldn't say necessarily the nation, but the social media is an avenue for a lot of fake people. And there is a mystery God. You know, the mystery God is on Facebook and Instagram. And those are dangerous people, man, because I see some of the posts that they put up and some of the arguments, and in my mind, I'm asking myself, how is this civilized? And how is this argument relevant? And how is it doing anything for your duty? And we got to nip that in the bud in some form or fashion, but I don't know how. That's just another form of the devil causing trouble among the righteous people. And the devils, I would definitely have to be those fake jive pretenders, the ones that's out there misteaching, misguiding, misrepresenting. We worked real hard to get out of that stigma back in the day, you know, because we were a nation that's always been misunderstood, because it's instantly they think that we're prejudiced just because we say God is in our own image, even though you can find it in the Bible. You know, you can find it in there word for word. What we saying, we ain't making up. It's all science, mathematics, and facts that you could go on the internet, pick up a book, or speak to a great scholar that's going to be honest, and they're all going to tell you the same thing. But when we teach it, it's something that it's always looked at, they try to take it apart. But we get what that means. But these new cats that's fake and coming across with calling themselves God, come in the name of Allah, the 5% nation, that are not, they're doing a lot of damage, man. And we have to find a way of policing and exposing and running them from among us. We have to do that. If not, everything we worked for, it's going to be hard to regain that back. You know, it's going to be real hard to regain that back. So that's my positive and the negative. The negative is the people who claim to be true and living, but they're not. That I got an issue with that, because I mean, if you're not gonna go out there and teach on the streets or in the school, at least teach your family. You know, deadbeat dads and, you know, the other things that they're doing that's not civilized and things that they're using to exploit the people that they should be teaching. I don't see that as being right and exact, and that's just my duty, that's my personality, that's how I see things, and there's others that's gonna disagree, but I'm gonna stand by that. You know, if you're not doing this for real, don't claim my nation. Don't come in the name of Allah. There's too much work been put in. Brothers lost their lives over this, you know, and there's a passion of real love and understanding, and I feel that needs to keep going. The babies. That's our goal. And you know, brothers need to teach the women. You know, you teach a man child, they grow up to be a great man. You teach a woman child, they grow up to birth a great nation. We need that. So you can't always necessarily feel you got to build with the brothers, and the brothers aren't doing what they have to do with the women. It's the sun, moon, and star, and that's our flag, and we gotta keep that part holy, as holy as we can. All right, so I'm gonna build on my beloved brother, Just Life. I have several memories, great memories that I share with that brother. I remember he was one of the first, other than Born, to have his own apartment. And in the apartment, all he had was a mattress, one light bulb, and a chair. And the guard used to sit under that light bulb with his book of life till all hours of the night with that light. There's so many times I've actually seen him do it that that's my main memory that I have with the guard. I remember there was one time I'd come home from Fresno. I had a little break, and it was a Parliament Day, and I didn't have a car at the time. That car was giving issues, and I called him up, or he called me, whatever the case was, and he asked me if I was going through the parliament, and I told him that I couldn't, and he said, "Oh man," he said, "I'm gonna come get you." So he drove from LA all the way up to Simi Valley, picked me up, and then it was just me and him. And he was like, "Oh, what's up with you? What you doing up in Fresno?" And I said, "Just playing ball." And he said, "120 yet?" And I said, "Yeah." And he just turned up the radio and said, "Okay." And we went to the parliament. Right before we got out of the car, the guard looked at me and he said, "I hope you got something good to say from that long ass ride." We got out, we had a great parliament, and I was expecting to get myself back home. The guard sitting outside. So we went, there was a Coley's across the street, Jamaican spot. Got some patties and some cocoa bread, a couple of ginger beers, jumped in the ride. He took me back to the valley. And we got into this argument about time. Because I told him I'm trying to manage my time for sports and school and to study my lessons. And the guard and me got into an argument where he said there was no such thing as time. And I said there has to be such thing as time, because that's how our schedule, that's how we get paid, that's how we wake up and we deal with it. But he kept on saying that Allah has no birth record, no beginning or no end. Which was true to a degree, but you got to pay attention to that clock. That was my lesson. So we argued all the way up to the valley, and when we got there, I got out the car, and I went to come around and, give him a hug, because I thought the guard was about to roll out. And he got out the car, we went in the house, and he said, "Show me that you know that 120 now." And we were up all night, and I offered for the guard to stay, and he said he was about to head back down to the city. Maybe 1, 2 o'clock in the morning after Parliament Day. And those are things that just was actually the first person that I went through all 120 with. And I never really told him that. The 120 that I had, I'd go through sections with brother, but to go from the student enrollment all the way to the end of the degrees of 120, that was amazing, man. Them solar facts, actual facts, we went all the way through it. And the guard wanted me to be on point. And he said, even though you playing ball, you still got a duty to do. And I'm real thankful for that, and that's the type of guard that the brother was. He was just about whatever he was about to do, he was going to do it right. And that's what I remember about Just. He did everything right. He was a perfectionist in from his dress till his delivery of the lessons, to his listening, to checking somebody that was out of line. He did everything right and exact. Mr. God, man, I wish last year that before he went back, I wish we had spent more time together, because I was doing my thing, he was doing his, and we let almost a year go between us before I had seen him. And when I got the news, man, that was like something that you never get used to hearing. It's still a trip that the guard ain't here, because out of the firstborn, he's the only one in the physical that's still not here, that we can't see, that we want to touch. And we know we'd be on a higher plane, a higher level with him here, because he was just that type of brother, He was a man's man. If I could best describe my brother, he was a man's man, and I miss him, We different along the lines, but then again, I feel that I related to him a lot too, because we had a lot of responsibility on our hands, and we understood the application of the degrees, you know, and I think we got those early. I think we got those real early, and that's what we were trying to do. And I seen him doing that, and he seen me doing that, and he was one of my biggest supporters. And not just him, Born, all the guards supported me, but we had a special relationship that was different from how I had a relationship with Mai or with Born, or how Born and Mai's relationship with Just was completely different from mine, because they were brothers of a different level, and me and him too, but it was just different. But everybody that speaks about him says the same thing. That was the guard, you know, and I miss that brother, man. I miss that brother. I wish I could have another conversation with him, you know, and seeing his daughters and his mother and the rest of his sister, you know, occasionally a brother or somebody from his family, it's always peace, because I knew that Just took care of them and he loved them, and they know us and they love us, and it's family. It's family every time we see them. That's the first thing that they say, come among us, it's family. So we definitely give respect to that brother. We're not gonna spook him up though, because he was a man in the flesh and the blood just like us. You know, it's just a brother that, it's one of those people that you always miss, even though he went back a while ago. It's almost been just years since the guard been back, and you still think of him every single day, you know. And it wasn't just the fact that he went back, it was the fact of how he went back, you know. That's what burns with me the most. And you know, we was building on it the other day with the guard knowledge, you know, the guard knowledge, and also Sudan. We were kind of communicating with that, and it's just a burn that comes every once in a while. And I know I'm feeling that. I know my Born, King Born, El Sadiq, we all feeling it. We all feeling the same pain of missing that brother, but we doing his duty. So just like the Father, when we come together, we're one. So we don't miss him then, because we're one. But we got a million stories to tell of that brother, man. And you know, rest in peace. Just life. Peace.